Welcome back, students. My name is Mr. Morgan, and let's talk biology. I'm going to share my screen so we can tackle this lesson together. So we know our concept 3, energy flow through ecosystems, and we know our concept 4, photosynthesis. This lesson is going to wrap those two together. So let's take a look at our big idea. Our big idea is going to be to identify the patterns in energy flow through ecosystems and photosynthesis and determine how they work together. As our objective, we're going to be able to recognize how energy is converted through photosynthesis and then transferred throughout those ecosystems. Following this lesson, there will be a discussion post assignment afterwards. So moving forward, let's look at food webs and photosynthesis as an illustration. This lesson brings together the concepts of photosynthesis and food chains and webs and how they are dependent upon each other. This is a great illustration because it shows our sun and our water coming together. Remember that we need that CO2 as well to start photosynthesis, but that's kind of what's making that producer, that grass. And we know for plants, that plants are the autotrophs, which means they produce their own food. They use this process of photosynthesis to transform the water, sunlight, and carbon dioxide into oxygen and simple sugars that the plant uses as fuel. The primary producers form the base of an ecosystem and fuel the next trophic levels. So kind of as I was stating, we've got our producer, the grass. That grasshopper is going to be that primary consumer, eating the grass, taking the energy from the grass and using it for itself. That secondary consumer is going to be the snake. That snake's going to consume the grasshopper and so forth. That hawk is going to consume the snake and take the energy from the snake. That fungi, that decomposer, that detritivore is going to get that hawk when it dies. And then the whole cycle is going to start over again with the nutrients going to the grass, and we're going to get right back into the grasshoppers. So let's review energy flow in ecosystems. This concept was covered a while back. We know that energy exists in different forms, but it is neither created nor destroyed. It converts to other forms. If we think about our big idea, right? We're not seeing how energy is created, we're seeing how it is converted. We know that energy is stored in cells, in macromolecules, and they are released during cellular respiration, which is our next concept. And this is going to get transported by the molecule adenosine triphosphate. We know this as ATP, that energy molecule that we use in photosynthesis. Producers are organisms that get their energy directly from the sun or through chemosynthesis. Some of you, we ran through that PowerPoint. And they use that energy for their own life and become food for other organisms. We know that all plants are producers. And we know that consumers get their energy from living or once living organisms. Often consumers start off by eating plants because we know plants are those autotrophs, those producers, those first stages in the energy flow. So how do producers get their energy? We know that synthesis is to make in the word of photosynthesis. So let's take a look at green plants and cyanobacteria. We know that those are going to use photosynthesis because they're going to use that source of energy, the sunlight, but they're also going to use those non-living sources for energy. If we take a look at the sulfur-rich salt marsh, those deep sea bacteria vents, those too are going to use those non-living sources for energy, but that's going to be done through chemosynthesis because their source of energy is those chemicals. Once again, we think of chemosynthesis, we're thinking those deep water organisms, those bacteria that get no sunlight, so they have to use chemosynthesis. Other than that, most plants above the surface, we're always using photosynthesis. We're using that sunlight as a source of energy. Now let's take a look at consumers and how they get their energy. Consumers get their energy by eating other organisms, just plain and simple. They break down those macromolecules inside of the organisms to release ATP in a process called cellular respiration. As I mentioned before, this is our next concept that we will be covering. We got 4 types of consumers, right? We got our herbivores. We're going to think about organisms that only eat vegetation, only going to eat plants. We got our carnivores. They only eat meat. Our omnivores are those overall around eaters. They're not picky. They will eat meat and vegetation, healthiest ones. And our detritivores, those decomposers, that fungi. When things die, the bacteria that's going to go eat them and start the cycle all over again. And as the slide says, they eat those dead materials. So let's take a look at this slide, how the energy flows. We know the cycle of energy is based on the flow of energy through different trophic levels in an ecosystem. At the first trophic level, primary producers use solar energy to produce organic material through photosynthesis. The herbivores at the second level, trophic level, use the plants as food, which gives them energy. Omnivores and carnivores at the third and fourth levels eat other living organisms as food, which give them energy. And we got to kind of remember that rule of 10, right? Each level is only going to get 10% of the energy from the previous level because we know that 90% is lost in heat. So we can see those primary producers starting off the energy flow at 100%. The primary consumers are only going to get 10% of that. The secondary consumers are going to get 10% of 10%. So now we're at 1%. Those tertiary, the third level consumers, they're now at 0.1% following the rule of 10. That apex predator, in this, we could call it the quaternary consumer. It's going to get 10% of that 0.1%. So that's why we see it at the 0.01 percentage. And we see that energy lost as heat. And then they all track back to the decomposers to start the cycle again. Well, let's take a look at these trophic levels. We kind of had a similar example earlier on with a snake instead of the mouse, but let's see if you guys can classify each type of these consumers. I'll give you guys about 30 seconds and then we'll go through them. Think about how the arrows are going, right? We never see the arrows going downward. We always see them going upwards. So that should kind of give you a hint of where to start and what's going to be our producer. All right, let's go over these, right? We know our grass. Our grass is going to be that plant, which is doing photosynthesis. It's going to be that autotroph. So we're going to call it the producer. And like I was saying, looking at those arrows, we know that's going to be the start of our trophic level. Therefore, that means our grasshopper is going to be that primary consumer. It's the first thing eating the grass. It's the first thing getting that energy from the grass. That mouse, therefore, is going to be the secondary consumer. And then the owl is going to follow up as that tertiary consumer. And this is how the energy flows in this trophic level. If we were looking at percentages, the grass would have 100%, the grasshopper would have 10%, the mouse would have 1%, and the owl would be at that 0.01%. We got a quick 2-minute video here showing energy flow in an ecosystem. We're going to watch it together right now.
Welcome to Moo Math and Science. In this video, I'd like to talk about energy flow in an ecosystem. All living things, which are biotic factors, require energy. Some of these biotic factors get their energy from the sun. Others eat other biotic factors. As a result, energy flows in ecosystems. The flow of energy can be represented with food chains and food webs. For most ecosystems, the ultimate source of energy is the sun. And as you move from one organism to another, you move up a trophic level. For example, moving from the mollusk to the white perch would be a trophic level. Producers use photosynthesis to create their energy, and they are a very large source of energy in most ecosystems. Plants and algae are examples. As consumers eat these producers, carbon bonds are broken and energy is released, and this energy is transferred from one level to another. However, as you move from one trophic level to another, you lose 90% of this energy. This is known as the 10% rule. For example, if you start with 1,000 joules of grass and a grasshopper eats the plant, only 10 joules will be transferred. And a bird eats the insect, only 1 joule will be transferred. Where does this energy go? Most of the energy is lost as heat. The energy flow in an ecosystem follows the laws of thermodynamics. The first law states that energy cannot be created nor destroyed in a system. However, it can be converted from one form to another. The second law states that this energy conversion is never completely efficient, and as a result, most of your energy is lost as heat. So there we go, the energy flow in an ecosystem. Thanks for watching, and Moo Math uploads a new math and science video every day. Please subscribe and share.
Perfect, right? So that kind of just recapped those last couple slides we went over. But none of those organisms can get their energy without the system starting off with a plant. That plant needs the incredible process of photosynthesis to be the base of the food chain/web. Now we're going to get kick-started with photosynthesis. Let's review it. All organisms need that constant supply of energy to survive. For most life on Earth, the ultimate source of energy is the sun. Converting that energy source into something usable is accomplished by photosynthesis. Photosynthesis, the real definition, right? The overall process by which sunlight, that solar or light energy, chemically converts water and carbon dioxide into chemical energy stored in glucose, and it releases oxygen as that waste product. The chloroplast, which is an organelle in the plant cell, is the location where photosynthesis takes place. And we know that there are 2 stages in photosynthesis, right? We've got that light-dependent reaction and the light-independent reaction. Here's another visual. We know that water and those minerals are going to be taken up through the roots. It's going to draw in CO2 from the leaves, and it's going to take in that sunlight. Those are going to be our reactants in our formula. And then as our products, we know that in photosynthesis, the 2 byproducts that it makes are those glucose, the C6H12O6 molecules, and we're going to release that oxygen gas. Just looking at the chemistry behind it, kind of summarizing that formula I just went over. We've got our reactants and we got our products. Those reactants are going to be our ingredients, that CO2, that carbon dioxide, and H2O, water. That's what we're putting into the equation. We don't call solar energy a reactant. It's what yields our reactants to produce the products. And so we know our products, those results, those are going to be our C6H12O6, those glucose molecules, and that O2 oxygen, that waste product that gets released. Just a key note here, solar energy from the sun is necessary for photosynthesis to happen, as well as some enzymes, but it isn't considered a reactant or product, kind of what I was just saying at the beginning of this slide. We got another quick 2-minute video here, kind of how photosynthesis is essential and it's keeping Earth alive for us.
Humans depend on plants for survival. They help provide us with food, fuel, medicine, oxygen, and so much more. And plant survival depends on one incredible natural process, photosynthesis. Here's how it works. Photosynthesis is a chemical change that happens in the leaves of green plants, in which the plant uses the energy from light to make its own food source. To perform photosynthesis, plants need 3 things: water, carbon dioxide, and sunlight. The plant takes up water from the ground through its roots, pulling it all the way up the stem and ultimately storing it in the leaves to be used when photosynthesis begins. The leaves also have tiny holes that can take in carbon dioxide from the air. These steps provide the raw materials needed for photosynthesis. And the whole process of photosynthesis is triggered by the energy from sunlight hitting the leaves. The sunlight excites the plant's chlorophyll, the natural pigment that makes them green. The water from the roots is split into oxygen and hydrogen, and the oxygen is released into the atmosphere. The hydrogen bonds with the carbon dioxide from the air to make glucose, the food for plants. So this Earth Day, take a moment to stop and smell the roses. Or
I'll stop it there, guys. We're not anywhere near Earth Day, but that was a great video recapping on photosynthesis. So let's review energy flow and photosynthesis as a whole. Let's wrap together these two concepts. We know that energy is an essential component of life that flows through all parts of a food chain. We've got those producers, the primary consumers, the secondary consumers, and the tertiary consumers. We know that all organisms need a constant supply of energy to survive. That rule of 10 that we saw in that pyramid diagram states that 90% of energy is lost through heat, and the next organism only gains 10% of energy from the organism prior. We know that plants are autotrophs and producers, those first stages, right? Because they use photosynthesis to produce the energy they need, and therefore they give the energy to those other consumers. And we know that photosynthesis produces glucose. Once again, that's C6H12O6 molecule for energy, and releases oxygen, that O2, as a waste product that allows animals to breathe, even us humans. And food chains and photosynthesis are dependent upon each other. So to wrap up this lesson, we've got an energy flow and photosynthesis assignment. You guys will write about the relationship between photosynthesis and food chains and webs. This is going to be a quarterly writing assignment. Go ahead and open lesson 3 for the instructions and the assignment. You guys will see the prompt there and the questions to answer. That's going to be it from Mr. Silverstein and I. We hope you guys have a great and safe Thanksgiving break. We hope to see your best work on this quarterly writing assignment, and we're excited to see you guys that are coming back after break. Thank you.